Ambassador Catherine had served the Galactic Concord for 200 years. She had met hundreds of species. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched stars die. But nothing in all her long life had prepared her for the humans. The Concord had studied humanity for 3 centuries. They had watched them crawl out of their caves. They had watched them build cities. They had watched them reach for the stars. The official reports called them persistence predators and gave them a moderate threat rating. Catherine had read those reports many times. She thought she understood what humans were. She was wrong. It happened on Station Meridian 7, a trading post on the edge of civilized space. Catherine was there to negotiate a mining contract with the Corthan delegation. It was supposed to be a simple meeting. 3 days of talks, then home to her warm world and her garden. The Devourers came on the 2nd day. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Devourers. They were the darkness between stars. They were the reason ancient civilizations had built warning beacons that still pulsed after 1,000,000 years. They were a swarm of chitinous bodies and razor teeth that moved from world to world, eating everything in their path. 11 civilizations had fallen to them. Entire species existed now only in museum records. When the alarms started screaming, Catherine did what her instincts told her to do. She ran to the emergency bunker. Her 4 hearts beat in perfect sync, pumping fear chemicals through her body. Every cell in her being told her to hide, to freeze, to wait for death or rescue. The bunker was full of other species doing the same thing. The Corthan had curled into defensive balls, their armored shells clicking softly. The Ymiri were releasing calming pheromones, accepting their fate with chemical peace. A group of Velshak huddled in the corner, their large eyes blank with terror. Catherine watched the security feeds. She saw the Devourers pour through breaches in the outer hall. Thousands of them, maybe millions. They moved like water, filling every space, consuming every living thing they found. Then she saw the humans. There were maybe 50 of them on the station. Workers, traders, a few tourists. When the alarms sounded, they did not run to the bunkers. They ran toward the breaches. Catherine's translator struggled with the sounds they made. Her cultural database finally identified them as war cries. The humans were screaming as they charged into the swarm. Not screaming in fear, screaming in something else. Something her language had no word for. She watched a human maintenance worker, a small female with gray hair and wrinkled skin, grab a welding torch from her belt. The woman was old by human standards. Her hands shook. Tears ran down her face. And she was laughing. Actually laughing as she jammed the torch into a Devourer's mouth and burned it from the inside out. A young human male picked up a metal pipe and swung it like a weapon. He was crying too. His whole body trembled with fear. But he did not stop swinging. He did not stop fighting. He killed 4 Devourers before they pulled him down, and even then, he kept fighting. He bit one of them. He actually bit a Devourer with his soft human teeth. The humans died. Most of them died. But they died fighting. They died screaming. They died taking as many Devourers with them as they could. And then something impossible happened. The swarm retreated. Catherine watched the feeds with all 4 of her eyes. She watched the Devourers pull back from the station. She watched them flee into the darkness of space. In all the records of all the civilizations that had faced the Devourers, there was not a single account of them retreating until now. When the all-clear sounded, Catherine left the bunker on shaking legs. She walked through corridors filled with Devourer corpses. She counted human bodies. 43 of them. 43 humans had died fighting. She found the human commander standing in the main concourse. He was a tall man with dark skin and gray in his hair. His uniform was torn and covered in blood, some of it his own. His hands shook badly. His eyes were red and wet with tears. Catherine approached him slowly. She did not know what to say. She had never seen anything like what she had just witnessed. "I was terrified," the commander said before she could speak. His voice was rough, broken. "I have never been so scared in my entire life." Catherine stared at him. This did not make sense. She had watched him fight. She had watched him lead the charge. She had watched him kill devourers with his bare hands when his weapon broke. "Then why did you fight?" she asked. The commander looked at her. His expression was strange. Like she had asked him why water was wet. Like she had asked him why stars gave light. "Because I was terrified," he said simply. "What else would I do?" Catherine did not have an answer. In her culture, in every culture she knew, fear meant one thing. Fear meant run. Fear meant hide. Fear meant surrender. But humans were different. For humans, fear meant fight. She looked at the commander's shaking hands. She looked at the tears still wet on his face. She looked at the dead devourers piled around him. And for the first time in her 200 years of life, Ambassador Catherine of the Volani delegation felt truly afraid. Not of the devourers. Not of the darkness between stars. She was afraid of these strange, soft, weak creatures who had just done the impossible. She was afraid of humans. The Galactic Concord had many departments. They had departments for trade and departments for war. They had departments for science and departments for art. But the department that worked the hardest after the Meridian 7 incident was the department of xenopsychology. Dr. Yemeth led the investigation. She was old, even by Volani standards. She had spent 400 years studying how alien minds worked. She had written papers on the hive consciousness of the Korthan. She had decoded the chemical language of the Ymiri. She thought she had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. Humans proved her wrong. She started with interviews. Thousands of them. She talked to human soldiers and human farmers. She talked to human scientists and human children. She asked them all the same questions. What did fear feel like? What did they do when they were afraid? Why did they not run? The answers confused her. A human soldier told her that fear made him sharper. His senses got better. His thoughts got clearer. He said fear was like a drug that made him stronger. A human farmer told her that fear was a gift from her ancestors. She said her grandmother had taught her to respect fear, to use it, to ride it like a wild animal. A human child, only 10 years old, told her that fear meant something mattered. If you were not afraid, the child said, then you did not care enough. Dr. Yemeth ran brain scans. She studied human chemistry. She read their history books. She watched their movies and listened to their music. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to understand. For most species in the galaxy, fear was a simple thing. It was a signal to stop, to hide, to run away. Evolution had made it this way because it worked. The creatures that ran from predators lived to have children. The creatures that fought usually died. Earth had been different. Dr. Yemeth read about the world humans came from. It was a death trap. Everything on that planet wanted to kill them. The big animals wanted to eat them. The small animals carried diseases that could destroy whole populations. The plants were often poisonous. The weather could freeze them or burn them or drown them. Even the tiny organisms they could not see were constantly trying to invade their bodies. There had been nowhere to run. No safe place. No shelter that lasted. The early humans had been weak. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. They were slower than their predators and weaker than their prey. They should have died. Every logical model Dr. Yemeth built said they should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but they did not die. They survived. They thrived. They conquered their entire planet and then reached for the stars. How? Dr. Yemeth found the answer in their biology. Human fear did not work like other species' fear. When a human felt afraid, their body released chemicals that made them stronger, faster, more alert. Their hearts pumped harder. Their muscles got more energy. Their minds focused with terrible clarity. Other species had some of these responses too. But in other species, these responses were meant to help them run away faster than humans. They were meant to help them fight harder. Somewhere in their evolution, humans had turned fear inside out. They had taken the thing that was supposed to make them hide and made it into a weapon. They had domesticated fear, the way other species domesticated animals. But it was not just biology. It was culture too. Dr. Yemeth studied human stories. Their oldest tales were full of heroes who faced their fears. They celebrated warriors who stood against impossible odds. They told their children that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was being afraid and fighting anyway. They passed this down through generations. Parents taught children. Teachers taught students. Soldiers taught soldiers. Every human grew up learning that fear was not their enemy. Fear was their friend. Fear was a signal that something mattered. Fear was permission to fight with everything they had. Dr. Yemeth spent 50 years on her research. When she finally presented her findings to the Concord Council, she was tired. Her hands shook with age. But her voice was steady. Human fear is not like our fear, she told them. When we are afraid, we shut down. When they are afraid, they wake up. Fear makes us weak. Fear makes them strong. The more frightened a human becomes, the more dangerous they are. The council members shifted in their seats. Elder Morvith, who had led the council for 3 centuries, leaned forward. "You are telling us," he said slowly, "that humans are powered by the very thing that defeats most species?" "Not exactly," Dr. Yemeth replied. "I am telling you that humans did something no other species in known history has done. They took fear and made it their own. They bred it into their children. They built their culture around it. They made it part of who they are." She paused. Every eye in the room was fixed on her. "Fear is not their weakness," she said. "It is their inheritance. It is their bloodline. It is the gift their ancestors gave them, written into their very cells. When a human is afraid, they are accessing millions of years of survival. They are calling on every ancestor who faced death and refused to look away." Elder Morvith was quiet for a long time. "What do we do with this information?" he finally asked. Dr. Yemeth did not hesitate. "We classify it at the highest level," she said. "And we pray that no one is ever foolish enough to make humanity truly afraid." The council voted unanimously to seal the report, but reports had a way of getting out. And somewhere across the galaxy, others were watching. The hegemony of Krath had ruled their sector of space for 12,000 years. They were warriors. Their entire society was built around conquest. They had crushed hundreds of species under their boots. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. When they looked at human space, they saw opportunity. The humans were new to the galaxy. Their territory was small and scattered. Their military was weak by Krath standards. They had no great fleets, no planet-killing weapons, no empire that could strike back. The Krath High Command made their calculations. A swift attack would break human morale. A few burned colonies would bring them to their knees. Within a year, humanity would be just another servant race, mining resources for Krath glory. They attacked without warning. 3 human colonies burned in a single day. 40 million humans died in fire and vacuum. Cities that had taken generations to build turned to ash in hours. Children who had never known war learned its taste in the worst possible way. The Krath sat back and waited for surrender. It did not come. Instead, they received a transmission from Earth's unified council. The message was short. 6 words in simple standard galactic. You have made us afraid. The craft commanders laughed when they read it. They had made many species afraid. Fear meant weakness. Fear meant surrender. Fear meant victory. They did not understand what they had done. The humans did not send their military first. They did not have much military to send. Instead, something stranger happened. Something the craft had never seen before. Civilian ships started appearing in craft space. Freighters, mining vessels, passenger liners, cargo haulers, thousands of ships that had never been built for war. They came from every human world. They came from stations and outposts. They came from places so small they did not have names. The crews were not soldiers. They were workers, teachers, farmers, artists, scientists, old people and young people. People who had never held a weapon in their lives. They came anyway. General Vreth commanded the craft Third Fleet. He had fought in 100 campaigns. He had never lost a battle. When his scouts reported the civilian ships, he laughed. They send us targets, he told his officers. They send us cargo ships and passenger liners. Have they lost their minds? His tactical officer studied the data. Her scales went pale. General, she said quietly, those ships are armed. They have welded weapons onto cargo bays. They have converted mining lasers into combat systems. Some of them have no weapons at all, just mass. They are planning to ram us, General. They are planning to crash their ships into ours. Vreth stared at the display. He watched the human ships spread across the sector like a swarm of insects. Each ship was weak, easy to destroy. But there were so many of them, and they kept coming. He opened a communication channel. He wanted to understand. A human face appeared on his screen. It was an old man with white hair and wrinkled skin. He wore civilian clothes stained with grease. His hands shook. Tears ran down his face, but his eyes were something Vreth had never seen before. They were the eyes of someone who had already accepted death. Someone who had nothing left to lose. Someone who was no longer fighting to win. Someone who was fighting to make sure the enemy lost. Why do you do this? Vreth asked. His voice was quieter than he intended. You cannot win. You must know you cannot win. Your ships are weak. Your weapons are crude. We will destroy you all. The old man smiled. It was not a happy smile. My daughter was on Colony 3, he said. My grandchildren were on Colony 3. They are dead now. Because of you. Vreth felt something cold in his chest. He had killed many enemies. He had never felt cold before. So you come to die? He asked. I come to make sure you remember, the old man said. Every Krath who survives this day will remember what it cost. Every Krath child will learn that humans are not prey. We are not victims. We are not a servant race waiting to be conquered. His voice grew stronger. His tears still fell, but his hands stopped shaking. You made us afraid, he said. That was your mistake. When we are afraid, we do not run. We do not hide. We do not beg. When we are afraid, we fight. We fight until we win or we die. And if we die, we make sure you never forget the price. The transmission ended. Vreth looked at his tactical display. The human ships were getting closer. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Each one crewed by civilians who had left their homes knowing they would never return. For the first time in 3 centuries of warfare, General Vreth of the Krath Third Fleet felt something new. He felt afraid, and unlike the humans, he had no idea what to do with that feeling. The war lasted 4 years. When historians looked back on it, they could not understand how humanity won. Every logical analysis said they should have lost. They were outgunned at every turn. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. The Krath had better ships, better weapons, better training, but the Krath had never fought an enemy like this. Human civilians kept coming. They flew their cargo ships into battle like missiles. They strapped bombs to their bodies and walked into Krath command centers. They fought with mining tools and kitchen knives in their bare hands, and they were terrified the entire time. That was what broke the Krath spirit in the end. Not human bravery, human fear. The Krath were warriors. They understood courage. They understood enemies who fought without fear. They had faced such enemies before and crushed them. But humans were different. Humans were clearly, obviously, deeply afraid. Their bodies shook. Their voices trembled. They cried as they charged into battle. They screamed as they died, and they never stopped coming. The Krath could not understand it. How could creatures so afraid keep fighting? How could they feel terror in every cell of their bodies and still move forward? It went against every law of nature the Krath knew. After 2 years, Krath soldiers started refusing orders. After 3 years, entire fleets surrendered without fighting. After 4 years, the hegemony that had stood for 12,000 years collapsed into chaos. The humans had not defeated them with weapons. They had defeated them with something far more powerful. They had shown the Krath what real fear looked like. And they had shown them that fear could be conquered. That terror did not have to mean surrender. That being afraid and being defeated were not the same thing. The Krath had never learned that lesson. When they finally felt true fear themselves, they had no tools to fight it. They broke. The humans did not doubt. 20 years later, Ambassador Catherine attended a memorial ceremony on New Meridian. She was old now, even by Vellani standards. Her 4 hearts beat more slowly than they once had. Her eyes were not as sharp, but she had not missed a Meridian Memorial Day in 20 years. She owed the humans that much. The ceremony was held at the main memorial. A great statue of a human soldier stood in the center of a garden. The sculptor had captured something essential in the figure. The soldier's hands gripped his weapon tightly. His body was tense. His face showed clear fear, and his feet were planted forward, moving toward danger. Not away, Catherine watched the crowd. Humans of all ages filled the garden. Many of them had lost family in the war. Many of them had fought themselves. They stood in quiet groups, sharing memories, holding each other. A small girl, maybe 6 years old, stood before the statue with her mother. She stared up at the soldier's face for a long time. "Why does he look scared, Mama?" she asked. "Because he was scared, little one," her mother said gently. "He was very, very scared." The girl frowned. "But he is a hero. Heroes are not supposed to be scared." Her mother knelt down beside her daughter. Catherine moved closer, wanting to hear. "Let me tell you a story," the mother said. "A long time ago, before humans had fire or cities or ships that could fly, we lived in a world that wanted to eat us. Everything was bigger and stronger and faster than us. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We should have died. But we did not die," the girl said. She had heard this story before. "No, we did not die." "Do you know why?" The girl shook her head. "Because we learned a secret," her mother said. "We learned that fear is not the enemy. Fear is a friend who tells you something matters. Fear is the voice that says, this is worth fighting for. The ones who came before us, our ancestors, they did not fight despite being afraid. They fought because they were afraid." She touched her daughter's chest, right over her heart. "They passed that gift down to us, through blood and bone and memory, through thousands and thousands of generations. Every human who ever lived learned this lesson. Fear means you care. Fear gives you power. Fear is not weakness. Fear is strength." The girl thought about this. Her small face was serious. "So when I'm scared, I should fight?" When you are scared, her mother said, you should remember where you come from. You come from people who looked at the darkness and refused to look away. You come from people who stood against monsters with nothing but sticks and stones and their own two hands. You come from survivors. Every single one of your ancestors survived long enough to have children. That is why you are here. Their courage lives in your blood. She hugged her daughter tightly. Fear is not something to hide from, she whispered. Fear is your inheritance. Fear is your bloodline. And when you feel it, you should stand up tall and be proud. Because you are human. And humans turn fear into fire. Catherine turned away. Her old heart ached with feelings she could not name. She finally understood something that had puzzled her for decades. The Concord had classified humans as predators, dangerous animals, threats to be managed. They had been wrong. Humans were not predators. They had never been predators. Every predator in the galaxy ran when faced with something bigger. Every predator knew when to back down. Humans were something else entirely. They were prey. Soft, weak, fragile prey. Prey that had faced extinction every day for millions of years. Prey that had learned to bite back. Prey that had turned their terror into fury and their fear into strength. And that was far more frightening than any predator could ever be. Catherine looked up at the statue one last time. The human soldier stared forward, frozen in eternal courage. Eternal fear. Eternal defiance. She understood now why the Devourers had retreated on Meridian 7 all those years ago. She understood why the Krath had broken. She understood why the galaxy would never be the same. Humans had done the impossible. They had tamed the one thing that defeated every other species. They had made fear their weapon. Their tool? Their birthright dot, and as long as humanity existed, that gift would pass from generation to generation. Written in blood, carried in bone, whispered in every racing heartbeat and every shaking hand that still reached for. Fear is our bloodline, and we will never be prey again.